Hey guys, this is a quick tier list video before Endwalker comes out, just because I'm bored and it's just something to do for fun. I'm going to do each role separately because the first time I did a full video of all the jobs and that took 2 hours and 25 minutes. That's a little too freaking long. So I'm just going to do them separately, just go from there. So for today, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the tanks. This isn't going to be a full job breakdown or anything. This is just supposed to be a short video just for fun, really. If you want to learn about the jobs like in detail, there's plenty of resources out there. You have the balance, you have YouTube guides, there's so many different resources out there to get into the nitty-gritty. So that being said, S tier, I'm going to put, I personally believe Paladin is the best tank out of the group, out of the four currently. Now it comes second in damage compared to Gunbreaker, but I believe it has better defensive cooldowns than Gunbreaker, and it still has the high damage. It's the second highest damage of the tanks, and it's barely behind Gunbreaker. It's a negligible difference currently. For one, I feel its rotation. It has a very static rotation. It's hard to mess up, but when you do, it feels kind of bad to try to get back on track. Cooldowns fall out of alignment really easily, and it's not a good time. But it's kind of hard to mess up. It's a very simple, easy to play tank. After your first or second GCD, personally, I like to wait before you press your fight or flight. You do your dot, then you do your 1, 2, 3, then you use all your atonements. If you're not doing the 4 atonement rotation, which I'm not quite sure how to do, I don't remember off the top of my head, so I'm not even going to get into that. Do your dot combo again before your blade, your buff goes off cooldown, and then you go into your range phase. Speaking of range phase, it's the only tank that has a range phase, and that is awesome. The fact that you could pull away from a boss, if the boss is moving around, you could use it while dodging mechanics. It's just really freaking good. And one of its highest potency abilities in Camouflage is, well, it's ranged, and that's nuts. You get a correct direct hit with a critical direct hit with Camouflage, and it's just like, oh my god, this is what inner release Felcleave should feel like, but doesn't. It's really freaking good. Paladins generally are the utility tank, which 14's iteration of Paladin is a bit too strong. It does have good utility, but its damage is a bit high to be the utility tank. But it's really not that much better than the other tanks in that regard. So it does come with Clemency, the ability to heal itself and others. It is a pretty potent single target heal. But the problem is it uses its mana to cast that Clemency. So if you're using Clemency, that means you're not using Holy Spirit. And if you're not using Holy Spirit, you're losing damage. So generally you want to avoid using Clemency, but the fact that you have it there is an option that other tanks don't have, and that's something to consider. When it comes to raids, you'll probably find yourself not using it ever. You really shouldn't ever have to. But in dungeon content, or like Bashta content, whatever other, or Eureka kind of content, or deep dungeons, if you're doing solo content, Clemency is really helpful. It can be really useful. The self-sustain at a moment's notice is just really awesome to have on a tank. Its defensive cooldowns are middling. They're not particularly fantastic. Sheltron is probably the worst personal cooldown out of the tanks, as it only blocks. Let's see in particular. So Sheltron blocks damage. You're right. It just blocks damage, which reduces damage taken by 20% or something. I'm not sure, or 15% if you get the block. I think. Don't quote me on that. I could be completely wrong. Paladin is definitely my least played tank out of the four. I don't remember. Sheltron has always been like, I have it up, so I might as well use it kind of button. It's not particularly great. Not until Endwalker gets upgraded. Until then, it's a pretty whack ability, if I'm honest. You have again Sentinel is your 30% damage mitigation. Nothing important, not really unique. You have Divine Veil. Divine Veil is a decent. It's an okay party mitigation. It's hurt by the fact that it requires a heal in order for it to proc, and it doesn't apply to the Paladin himself. It only applies to the rest of the party, which is odd. It blocks. Let's see how much damage. I want to say 15%. Let's see. Prevents 10% of the Paladin's maximum HP. I assume it's a Paladin's HP. It might be based off of everyone's individual HP value. I'm not sure. Either way, it's not that great. Obviously, it's better if it's from the Paladin. He's the tank, but even so, it's not that great. But it's there. It's something that a couple other tanks don't have. That it blocks. It has. It's an HP shield, essentially, and that's pretty good. Actually, that's fairly good. Not giving that enough credit, because as you'll see, other cooldowns mitigate specific damage, and that's kind of meh. That's not great. That's never great. So it at least has universal application, which is more valuable than just a specific damage type of mitigation. The best? Not really. So it's invulnerability, hollowed ground. It's the easiest one to use for sure, as it blocks all incoming damage for 10 seconds. Well, most damage, you know. There are some exceptions here or there that goes for all the invuls in the game. But that's strong for sure. But I consider it to be the worst of the bunch because of its availability. It's, what is it, a 7-minute cooldown? It's ridiculously long. You'll get it no more than 2 times in a fight, unless it's an ultimate, maybe. Maybe. Big maybe. I'm not even, you'll have to talk to, you know, high-end players for that one. I'm not even sure if that's true. You'll most likely no more than 2 times in a raid fight. In a dungeon run, yeah, maybe you'll get it 2-3 times. It's just not available often, and that hurts it a lot. Not being able to use it, abilities having low availability is probably the worst aspect of an ability. Even if its numbers or its effect are strong, if it's not up often, that hurts its use. It hurts it a lot. So for that reason, I think Hologround's the worst of them all. Not by much, mind you, because when you do use it, yeah, it's pretty cool when you use it. I mean, you just stop all damage, and that's awesome. But man, it's just not up often. It's just going to be off cooldown, or it's going to be on cooldown all the time, and it just kind of blows. That's pretty much the biggest thing about the tanks. That's like the biggest difference the tanks have. Its damage is high, its rotation is simple, hard to mess up. It has a ranged phase, which none of the other tanks have. It has decent raid mitigation, has decent personal mitigation. Not the best, as Sheltron isn't that great, if I'm honest, it's pretty weak. You know, and Sentinel is just basic, Rampart basic. It comes with all the tank tools the other tanks have. So all in all, you know, clemency generally you don't want to use in raid content, but if you find yourself in solo content or you're playing with, you know, newer players or not so experienced players, the fact that you have clemency can definitely come in clutch for you. Yeah, and all that considered, I think Paladin is universally good. You could bring it to any kind of content. You know, there's a couple of other tanks that don't do that well in solo content, but Paladin does. And it's a bit more unique than a couple of the other tanks. So, you know, for those reasons, I think it's S tier. I currently think tank overall, and you take everything into consideration. Second to Paladin is Gunbreaker, in my opinion. Gunbreaker, honestly, depending on who you ask, they're interchangeable, really. Personally, I put Gunbreaker second to Paladin because Gunbreaker's defensive abilities are not as good as other tanks, as the rest of the tanks, really. Not in all ways, mind you. You'll see what I mean later. But Gunbreaker has the highest DPS out of the tanks. Not by much, mind you. From the lowest DPS tank to Gunbreaker is about a 2% difference, I think. It's really not that big of a difference. But it is still statistically the highest DPS out of the tanks, and if you care about damage, then that's something you should consider. Its rotation is actually pretty simple once you learn it. It only seems complicated to people who've never played it, but it's actually really simple. Your opener, you have a 1 minute rotation, a 30-second rotation, and you alternate between the two every time. It doesn't change. It's very static. Once you learn it, it's almost like it plays itself. Once you see it, you understand it, like, oh, this is how it works. You're just dumping in all these abilities in your no mercy window. I mean, it almost plays itself. It's just very simple to learn, very simple to play, as far as its rotation is concerned. The challenge with Gunbreaker is not in its rotation. The challenge is weaving in defensive cooldowns in between your continuation combo, because unlike the other tanks, continuation is basically taking up an OGCD cast. So in between every cooldown, you could use 2 OGCDs for the most part. There are some exceptions, but for Gunbreaker, in between every GCD, you can use 2 OGCDs. And one of those OGCDs are being taken up by continuation. And continuation is a main part of your rotation. You're not going to ignore continuation. And you need to use it. You will hurt your DPS if you don't, which is a no-no. Because of that, it makes, not only does it make moving bosses around with Gunbreaker kind of annoying, because you're constantly going in and out, in and out, in and out, trying to move the boss while keeping up your GCD and OGCD without letting them, go on, without losing time. You always want your global cooldown you always want to be passing something, you don't want to just be sitting there doing nothing. And then, of course, using your defensive buffs in between takes a little bit of getting used to. Is it that difficult? No, but it's just not as freeing as the other tanks when you're trying to be as optimal as possible. Let's look at its personal cooldowns. I personally think it has good personals. It has 1 good personal and 2 weak ones. So let's switch to Gunbreaker here. Now, its good personal is Heart of Stone. I don't know why I have this open, but whatever. It has, where's Heart of Stone? Right here. Reduces damage by 15% for 7 seconds. When targeting a party member, while under the effect of Brutal Shell, the effect is also granted to the target. So what Brutal Shell does, it gives you a little barrier and a heal with a potency of 200, if I recall. So, yep, cure potency of 200. You can pass on that effect to a teammate if you get Brutal Shell before you use Heart of Stone, which is cool. Heart of Stone reduces damage by 15% for 7 seconds. It has a 25-second cooldown at no cost. Solid ability. Nothing more to say about that. Solid ability. Love it. Before we get to the I'll say that for last. Aurora. This is a weak one. Grants a region to a target. You can target anyone else or yourself. Cure potency 200. Duration 18 seconds. It takes 1, 2, 3. Boy, it takes about 3 seconds for each heal proc. Just about 3 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds. 18 seconds. It's not that good of a heal. To be blunt, it's not that good. It'll maybe restore almost a third of your health, maybe. I'm gonna let someone else do the math on that. It's not that great. You kind of forget. You'll throw it on you or yourself. You usually throw it on yourself just when you're taking like auto attacks or whatever, just to have some health coming in. But it's just there. It's definitely not noticeable. When you stack it with Brutal Shell, it can come in a little handy just to keep yourself a little healthy, especially if you're doing solo content. But when you're doing raid content, it's kind of forgettable. So I'm just gonna leave it as mediocre ability. I don't think it's that great. Camouflage, another mediocre ability. Increases parry rate by 50% and damage taken by 10%. The parry effect is, for the most part, only useful in dungeons or if you're doing solo content. Practically useless in raid scenarios. Because you just, auto attacks just don't do that much damage to begin with. Maybe, arguably it has a little bit more use in ultimates where auto attacks actually do damage to you. I'll let someone else answer that though. I'm definitely not confident in that. But for the most part, this is a very mediocre ability. Only has use in big dungeon pools where you're taking a whole lot of auto attacks. So that parry rate comes in handy and reducing that damage is still 10% damage reduction. It's okay, not great, but it's there. It's something to use at least. And it doesn't come at a cost. It's just there, so you just pop it and hope for the best. Definitely a mediocre ability. 90-second cooldown for its effect. It's kind of a long cooldown for its weak effect, but it does last 20 seconds, so there's that. At least its duration is actually pretty decent. But the ability is rather mediocre. Alright. And its raid mitigation reduces magic damage taken by self and nearby party members by 10%. It's basically a carbon copy of Dark Knight's mitigation, party-wide mitigation. 10% affects the whole party, 15-second duration, and mitigation specific, damage specific. Mediocre. It's a mediocre ability. It's there. It might come in clutch if your party is having a rough time in a fight, but it's mediocre. Usually just toss it out to just reduce damage and make your healer's life just a little bit easier, but for the most part, mediocre. At least it has something. But that's why I put it in second to Paladin, because while Paladin doesn't have the best personal cooldowns either, they're still a little better than Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker trades defensive cooldowns being particularly good for a little more damage, essentially. Now, lastly, it's invulnerability. Reduces your HP to 1 and renders you impervious to most attacks. So essentially you get the hollow ground effect where you take absolutely no damage, but you reduce your HP to 1 in order to do so. I want to say that makes it worse than Paladins, but here's the thing. So you generally use your invulns on moves that either take you down so low where you need a whole bunch of resources to heal, or it's going to just outright kill you. So you generally use it to avoid tank swap mechanics, typically. Usually you'll see that in Party Finder. Because of this, it's hit or miss. So I think reducing your HP to 1 is for the most part okay, because so let's say you're doing what's it called? E4S, right? And Titan does his stomp. I think he does it 3 times, if I recall. I haven't done the fight in a long time, in almost a year. But I think he stomps like 2 or 3 times. You take the first stomp, and then the second stomp is supposed to kill you. I think he does it 3 times. I'm not entirely sure. If you don't use any cooldowns. But you could just tank the first hit, get low, take the debuff, get low HP or whatever. You could pop Super Bowl at least a year ago before gear got better and whatnot. You take the first hit, then you just invuln like the other 2 hits in your duration. In situations like that, Super Bowl is perfectly fine to me. The cooldown difference This is 360 compared to 420, so it comes up a minute sooner. You know, I think I'm... Because a minute... I mean, that makes a difference in availability, but I mean, is it that much of a difference? I don't know. Maybe? I think it does. Depending on the fight, maybe in like an ultimate fight, it might make the difference where you might get another cast of Superbolide over Hollow Ground. So I'm not entirely sure if I want to consider it worse than Hollow Ground. I guess I'll put them on the same level. I'll let someone else who's more familiar, because I haven't done Savage Raid in quite a while. I returned back to the game just a couple months ago. I've done some streams with not Savage Raiding since then, so I'm not quite sure. For now, I'll pretty much rank them the same, because I think effectively they're similar. I don't think reducing your HP to 1 is like that big of a deal. Generally, like in a dungeon, you'll take a whole bunch of damage if your healer isn't, healing you. You're getting a little, then you'll pop it, and it gives your healer 8 seconds to get their shit together. Yeah, and then if you're using it in a raid scenario, in Paladin's case, I don't know. Generally, you'll take damage first and then use it. Like if you're going to get past a mechanic, it's usually like a multi-hit mechanic where you're trying to get the entire duration, get use out of the entire duration. So generally, you would take damage anyway. But I'm not entirely sure. I will consider Superbolide a little better than Hollow Ground just because it comes up a minute sooner, or its cooldown is a minute shorter than Hollow Ground. Alright, so that's enough of Gunbreaker. I've spoken enough about it. I consider it second to Paladin because it does a little more damage, but its offensive cooldowns are a little weaker. And because its rotation is a little more stringent because of continuation, which makes popping your defensive cooldowns in between a little less freeing, a little more strict. Because it takes away an OGCD use, and having to move bosses around during mechanics and keeping up your damage is kind of annoying. An issue other tanks don't really have. So for those reasons, it's still S tier. I mean, you can still bring it to just about all content. It's a better solo tank than Dark Knight, at least, if you want to use it. It still has okay self-sustaining solo content, and it's high damage, you can't go wrong. Very good tank. Alright. Next tank, Warrior. Where are you? Warrior, A+ tier. Now, personally, I prefer Warrior over Gunbreaker, personally, because I like my tanks to be self-sufficient and to make the life of the healers easier. Warrior is the best self-sustaining tank at no cost. It still upkeeps its unfortunately low damage output compared to these two over here. Lower damage output. But it doesn't come at a cost to anything. Warrior is freely able to do its damage and keep itself healthy without having to waste a resource on healing and losing damage because of it. Warrior's personal cooldowns are the best out of the tanks, in my opinion. Let's take a look at them. Let's start with, where is it? Okay, Raw Intuition. Reduces damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. Now, it does share a cooldown with Nascent Flash, but 25 second recast time, 25 second cooldown. Excellent ability, 20% for free. That's a good ability. There's nothing much else to say about that. That's a damn good ability. One of the favorite abilities of Warrior, Thrill of Battle, increases your maximum HP by 20% and restores the amount of HP that is increased. So, I have 186k HP, Pop Through Battle, 223k HP. And their health is restored. On top of that, As if that's not already good enough, increases HP recovery via healing actions on self by 20%. So healers heal you 20% more effective, and your self heals 20% more effective. Excellent ability. You just have more health. You have more of your resource to take damage. It's an excellent ability. 90-second cooldown. It's only a 10-second duration, but considering what it does, it has a powerful effect. Despite the short duration. Awesome ability. Love throw battle. Equilibrium. 1200 cure potency. What the fuck? On a minute cooldown. What the fuck? This ability is so good. Whoops. Look at this. A 40k heal, and that's not a crit. Imagine if that bitch crit. 1200 cure potency every minute on yourself. That's just fucking crazy. That's such a good ability, dude. These two abilities combined are a big reason as to why Warrior is the self-sustaining machine, but we're not done yet. Nascent Flash. Basically, you pop that on yourself or on a party member, and you get what's the melee DPS action? Bloodbath. You get Bloodbath. For the damage that you do, I think it's about 50% of the damage you do. Yep. Restores HP equaling 50% recovered by Nascent Flash, while reducing damage taken by 10%. So you're still getting, it's half, but you're still getting 10% damage reduction on top of healing 50% of the damage that you're dealing and 50% of the damage your other partner is dealing. You both heal each other. I think that's how it works. Don't quote me on that, but that's just excellent. Nascent Flash is a 25-second cooldown, 6-second duration. Between your inner release and your inner chaos, that's all you need. You don't need more time than that. You could get yourself over half HP just healing yourself. And if you crit, then forget about it. You're damn near full HP. Your healer can ignore Warrior, aside from your Savage and Ultimate content, but they can ignore Warrior a little more than they can the other tanks. Excellent self-sustaining tank. The best self-sustaining tank. It's so good. Super good. And I feel it has the best party mitigation tool. Shake It Off. Creates a barrier around self and your party members that absorbs 50% of maximum HP. Now I don't know if it's 15% of the warrior's HP or 50% of each individual's HP. I'm not sure. If it's of the warrior's HP, guess what? This gets empowered by Thrill of Battle because you have more HP. Pog. That's Pog as fuck. So if this scales purely just off the warrior's HP instead of each individual party member's HP, this ability is easily the best party-wide mitigation among the tanks. Easily. And among the best party-wide mitigation tools, period. It's an excellent ability. 90-second cooldown as well, 15 seconds. Oh, and also, it dispels Thrill of Battle, Vengeance, and Raw Intuition. It absorbs them and increases its absorption amount by 2% for each effect. Now, you're not going to have all these effects ticking just to make your Thrill of Battle stronger. That's not going to happen. But if you just so happen to have Thrill of Battle, like I just said, if you have Thrill of Battle on, which you might have it on, makes it 2% stronger. But you're generally not going to use these tools just to have a stronger shield. You're probably never going to do that on purpose. But it's there if need be. If you ever need it, it's there. And it's personal. Its invuln, I find, is the best among the tanks. I think it's the best invuln in the game. Brace yourself for an enemy onslaught, preventing most attacks from reducing your HP to 1. Less than 1. They can't reduce it less than 1. For 8 seconds. So, the con of Holmgang is that you're still taking damage, and you need to be healed. Now, here's the thing. Needing to be healed is an issue for other tanks, not an issue for Warrior, because as we just stated, this is the best self-sustained tank, easily. So it has no problem getting its own health pool back up to like over 50% on its own, easily. Not even a problem. Almost probably like 80%, probably, assuming things don't crit or whatever. So getting its health back up isn't even an issue. It can do it on its own, and at worst, the healer needs to use one cooldown, one XCOG, one ED, throw on a regen on top of it. Just let the warrior heal its damn self. It doesn't need help. So that is even a con for warrior in particular. The best thing about home game, it's 240 second cooldown. Not 2 minutes, 240 seconds. That's what, a 4 to 5 minute cooldown? Or, 4 to 5 minute cooldown. I think it's 4 minutes. I'm not particularly good with numbers. I'm not an intelligent individual, sadly. But, that it's just available so often. And that makes it the best one among all the tank tools. It definitely helps that the Warrior's kit is so well made. It's so well made defensively that, it does make sense that its damage is debatably the lowest of the tanks. It might be interchangeable with Dark Knight. Because its defensives are just they're nuts. They're so good, dude. They're so good, dude. They're so good. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put this on S minus. I don't have an S minus tier, bro. I'm gonna put it behind the other tanks, but its defensive cooldowns, so good. Honestly, the only real con with this class, in my opinion, is now subjectively, because it only has like 2 global cooldowns in upheaval and your dash. As far as OGCD damage, a part of your damage rotation. It can be boring to some. I find it's boring if you're not doing, challenging content. Then yeah, I would say it's boring, and I would say that for the tanks in general, because you're just not really engaged. You're just not in any danger. So if you don't really need to use your tools, then you're not really doing much of anything. You're just a melee DPS at that point. And I find Inner Chaos and Inner Release to be currently in this expansion for the next few days. I don't like Inner Release because it's spammy. I don't like having to use 5 GCD, being stuck to 5 GCDs, personally. I don't like it. I don't like the spamming of the felt leaves. I just personally never liked that. And then Inner Chaos, you can't use Inner Chaos within Inner Release. So you have to use one Inner Chaos before you go into Inner Release. So one, you're getting the cooldown on Inner Chaos lowered. You don't want to overcap, so you definitely want one ticking. And if you use Inner Chaos in between your Inner Release window, you're going to use a Inner Chaos. Oh, and I've been saying this incorrectly. This move is called Infuriate. And the Infuriate allows you to use Inner Chaos or the AoE variant, Chaotic Cyclone. So if you use Infuriate while you're in your Inner Release window, you will use your Inner Chaos or Chaotic Cyclone, and you will miss out on a Fell Cleave use or your AoE variant, which is a no-no. That sucks. You don't want to do that. Warrior is very heavily reliant on these abilities to do the damage it does, and even so, its damage output is still fairly low. It's still fairly weak. So you most definitely don't want to miss out. You don't want to make that mistake. You don't want to miss out on that potency. Another con of Warrior is having to keep up this stupid ass buff, Storm's Eye. Either A, remove this buff and just put that damage as a trait and just have it there passively, or have Storm's Eye just be applied, instead of allowing you to use it twice to make it a minute long, just make it a minute long, so you're only using it every minute. That would be much better than how it is currently. I don't like Storm's Eye at all. It's just a tedious ability which I don't think should be there anymore. For those reasons, I put it at A+ tier, but it's more correct to say like S minus, in my opinion. Despite its a bit low damage output, its defensive capabilities cannot be ignored. Its raid utility cannot be ignored. It's just a very solid. It's like the tank of the tanks. It is the tank of the tank classes, in my opinion. I'll go ahead and it's more like S minus, if I'm honest. It's not A plus. More like S minus. So I'm just gonna go ahead. I guess I should just remove B plus, but I did want to put Dark Knight, which was currently my favorite tank. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it's like it's hard to justify it being my favorite tank. But I enjoyed playing it. I want to put it A plus, but my heart says it's B plus. Man, Dark Knight has problems that other tanks don't have. This class is getting cupped. It has issues. It's been having issues that should have been fixed in Stormblood, and we're going into Endwalker with the same problems. I don't understand why the fuck the devs are leaving Dark Knight to be in the state that it's currently in. There are clear issues that need to be addressed, and they just continue to ignore it. It's really annoying. Don't know why they do this. Let's get into its personal cooldowns. Now, the first cooldown you're going to see people jerk off is the Blackest Night. Yeah, it's like the iconic ability of the Dark Knight, and arguably the only reason why you want to bring a Dark Knight over any other tank. And even then, I think that's an over-exaggeration. I don't think this ability is that good. Let's talk about it. Okay, so it creates a barrier that absorbs 25% of the target's maximum HP. Okay, it says target's maximum HP, not Dark Knight's maximum HP. So, the Blackest Knight on the Dark Knight blocks way more damage than the Blackest Knight on your healer. I think that's now this would be a better ability if it scaled only off the Dark Knight's health. That would help it a little bit. Now it does block a lot of HP. 25% is nothing to scoff at. And it has a 15% recast. I said 15%. 15-second cooldown. It has excellent availability. No doubt about that. Here's the reason why this ability is very overrated, and I find it to be more of a con than it is a pro. It uses 3k mana. Dark Knight's damage, one of its highest potency abilities, is tied to its mana in Edge of Shadow. That's a 500 potency ability. If your Blackest Knight, if it does not break, and you still have the shield by the time the duration goes off, you lose 3k mana. That means you lose 500 potency. No other tank has their personal mitigation tied to their damage. That is such dog shit design. Why in the fuck is that the case? To this day, that is still the case. Why the fuck wouldn't they change that? It's perfectly okay to nerf the shield, make it 20%, and remove the mana cost. Most of the content in the game, you'll be hard pressed to break your shield. You pretty much reserve it for tank busters, so you ensure that the damage you're taking breaks the shield. Otherwise, you lose 500 points. That feels so fucking bad. No other tank has that problem. That is awful design. Yeah, it's a fat shield, but you know what? There has never been a situation where I've used the Darkest Night and think to myself, man, I'm glad I had this over Heart of Stone. Or I'm glad I had this over the Warrior variant. What's it called again? Raw Intuition. I'd rather have those two abilities over the Darkest Night. Easily. Any day of the week. Because those abilities are free. They don't take away damage. And the cooldown difference between the two, there isn't a fight that is throwing out so much high damage that the cooldown difference between the two makes a difference. Maybe someone who does Ultimate can tell you differently. Maybe. I'm not even it seems to me Dark Knight is probably the least played tank in the highest high-end content, so I don't think that matters. And I don't think the highest clears even have that much TBN uses. The Darkest Night, or the Blackest Night, excuse me, I find it to be more of a pain to use than a pro. I almost hate this ability. I really don't like it in its current state. It needs to be changed. Alright, second defensive cooldown that I don't like. Dark Mind. Reduces magic vulnerability by 20%. 10% duration, you have it up every minute. Again, damage that is mitigation that's damage specific just sucks. Because you're just not getting that much universal use out of it. 20% might seem like a lot, but there isn't that much magic damage that threatens you that makes you feel like, damn, I'm so glad I had Dark Mind here. There's a few magic tank busters, but you're just gonna pop Sentinel and the Blackest Night anyway. Dark Mind typically is just additive. Like, you just throw it on top of what you need, and you're like, yay, I reduce some more damage. That's like, yay, but it's virtually it's almost useless, if I'm honest. If you reduce it to 10% and make it just a flat, just make it reduce all damage, you immediately have a better ability. It will reduce more damage over the course of a fight than it does in its current iteration. Dark Mind needs to be changed. It just isn't that useful. It's not used that often, and that sucks. It's raid mitigation. Dark Missionary. Similar to Gunbreakers, as I said, reduces magic damage by 10%, 15-second duration. It's there, it exists, it generally not needed, but if you just need to reduce some damage, help your healer out, it's there, it exists, whatever. Kind of mediocre for the same reasons that Gunbreakers is a bit mediocre. Dark Knight, you would think, oh, you know what? I was going to save that for last, but we'll just talk about Living Dead for now. This is easily the worst cooldown in the fucking game. Like, this cooldown is so poorly designed, I have no fucking idea how the fuck it's still in its current state. I don't know what the hell the devs are thinking with this ability. They do not play Dark Knight. Living Dead, I could just read it, but I'll try to explain it in an easier way. So, Living Dead, when you use Living Dead, your HP can still go to 0, and then it will proc. That proc, instead of dying, you will become Walking Dead. You're essentially a zombie for 10 seconds. For those 10 seconds, you're not going to die, despite still taking damage. Now, this is why it is the worst invuln in the game, and among the worst balance skills in this game. The worst design skill in this game. If you do not restore, excuse me, I should have had some water with me. My throat was starting to hurt. If you do not restore 100% of your HP's value, you don't need to get to it. Don't misunderstand. You don't need to get to 100% of your HP. You just need to restore 100% of your value, of your HP's value. So it's okay if you get to like 70% HP, eat a big move, get to 20% HP, and still recover the remaining 30%, and then you'll remove the buff. You don't need to be at 100%. If you do not manage that in those 10 seconds, you will die. The reason why that is trash is because your healers now have to focus all of their attention on getting you to 100% HP so you don't fucking die. If you have a white mage, you're perfectly fine. You just reserve benediction for your sorry ass for playing this class. And that's it. No one stresses out if you have a white mage with you. But God forbid you don't. Then, one, why the fuck are you playing Dark Knight? Is how I feel. Two, your healers are scrambling, using all of their best resources trying to get your ass to 100% HP. And it doesn't help, because Dark Knight doesn't have good self-sustain. Unlike Warrior. If Warrior had this ability, it wouldn't be half as bad because Warrior has excellent self-sustain. So it would be okay. But Dark Knight doesn't. Dark Knight heals with Soul Eater, which is a 300 cure potency. You have to use 2 GCDs ahead of it just to get there. A 300 cure potency ain't worth shit. And then you have Abyssal Drain, which is a 200 cure potency. This only matters when you're in an AoE situation. So you're doing big old dungeon pulls. Yeah, it might heal you to like almost half your HP. Maybe. If you crit, different story. It heals a decent amount in that situation. But you're doing raids where you're fighting no more than 2 bosses at once, or you're doing the T. You're doing T, and you have 3 of the bosses out at once or some shit. I don't know. This move, and you're not even gonna have them near together to get hit by Abyssal Drain, so that doesn't even matter. Abyssal Drain is fucking trash. Look at this potency. 200 potency and a 200 cure potency. What a fucking dog shit ability. It doesn't matter that it's up every minute. It's just weak. It's fluff. It's just there to press. What a dog shit bind, dude. And this is partly why Dark Knight is in the running for the lowest DPS tank. Its potencies are just fucking low. And you would think, considering that it has such dog shit defensives compared to the other tanks, that it would trade that in for more damage, but it fucking doesn't. Its defensives are dog shit. And TBN, not only is it overrated, but it doesn't make up for that bullshit. It's a shitty fucking move. Blood Weapon. Another, I was gonna say controversial, but another con of Dark Knight. So, it increases, it says it's a 10-second duration, but when you use it, it takes about a second for your animation to end that, for it to allow you to actually start using your weapon skills. So it's actually about 9 seconds. 9 seconds doesn't change, whatever. It restores 10 blood gauge for every weapon skill, and mana upon every weapon skill. I think it's like, what, 200 mana or something? For every weapon skill? Something like that. The issue with Blood Weapon is that you have to use it at the tailor end of your OGCD. So when you press, I was going to go into a demonstration. When you use a quick demonstration, I'm not getting really into this. When you use an OGCD or a GCD, you have this timer, right? See this timer on your hotbar? You want to use it near the end of the cast. So you can you're aiming to get 5 weapon skills in your blood weapon window to get the most mana and blood gauge out of it. You will miss out on a lot of damage if you only get 4. And you will only get 4 if you use it first. So when you use a GCD, you want to use something else ahead of it and use it last second to get your 3 GCDs. Here's your 5 GCDs. That's 4. Last second. I got it at the last second. If I used it before then, I wouldn't have gotten it. Inner release works the same way. You need to use it at the tailor end of your OGCD so you get your 5 weapon skills off to get all of your potency. If you don't, you're going to miss one. You're only going to get 4 weapon skills off. You're going to miss a fuck ton of potency. You don't want to do that. That's why these skills are poorly made. They're not great. And because these abilities work in this way, they force you to have a good amount of skill speed. So in my case, I run fast amount of skill speed, 2.38. This is a faster skill speed for Dark Knight. You could get 5 weapon skills in with 2.40, maybe 2.41. I'm not entirely sure on that. I do 2.38 just to have a little bit of wiggle room so I'm not salty and depressed if I miss a weapon skill and wanted to end my life at that point. That just feels fucking bad, man. Now, I was going to talk about the changes in Endwalker, but this is a Shadowbringer tier list, not an Endwalker tier list, so I'm not going to get into the changes. I will save that for Endwalker. For right now, this is how it works, and it's shit. You know what else is shit? Salted Earth. One of the worst fucking buttons in this game. Again, button blow. 90-second cooldown. 15-second duration. 60 potency per tick. And it ticks every 3 seconds, it seems like. Look at the damage this did. Look at the damage that did. This is a level 70 mob. I'm level 80 at, what, 521 eye level? That did 16% damage on this mob. What a dog shit ability, dude. Even in AoE situations, that's still not a good ability. It's just there. This is button blow. Why is Salted Earth so goddamn weak? For what? It doesn't do anything. It's just a worthless ability. Next ability. Living Shadow. This ability fucking blows too. No other tank has their damage tied to a fucking clone. That you have to worry about this dumbass clone getting its full duration to get all the damage off. First off, let's look how long it takes for the clone to actually act. Boom. It acted at 17 seconds. And it says its duration is 25 seconds. 24 seconds. Excuse me. That's a lie. It's 17 seconds of it actually doing something. It takes... What is that? It takes, what, 7 seconds for it to finally act. And then in between that time, it takes about 2 seconds for it to do its next weapon skill. Maybe like a second and a half to do its next weapon skill once it finally starts attacking. And I was right in front of my target. I wasn't far away from the target. If you're far away, it takes a little more time because I have to run up and then use plunge. Awful ability. Awful. It gets about like 7 weapon skills in, I think. 6, 7 hits in. If the boss goes invulnerable, oh, that's it. You're shit out of luck. You're missing out on potency. You need to make sure you use it, and it gets its full 17 seconds of fame in to get that damage. To get that damage out. No other tank has to worry about fucking their shadow getting out its damage. The Paladin just has to worry about getting its fight or flight window in or its ranged window in. Warrior has to worry about getting its inner release window in. And Dark Knight has to worry about getting not only its Living Shadow window, quote unquote window in, but it also has Delirium, which is functionally just a worse inner release. It works the same way. It just inner release has the arm's length effect where you won't get pushed back during its duration. Delirium doesn't have that. Other than that, it works the same fucking way. So that allows you to spam Blood Spiller or Quietus. For the same reasons that I don't like Fell Cleave spam, I don't like Blood Spiller spam, I don't like having a GCD being forced on, this one ability, but it will be changed in Endwalker, but as in its current state, I just don't like an ability like that. And similar to Blood Weapon, you want to use it at the tail end of your OGCD so you get 5 of your Blood Spillers in there. Missing one leaves you with depression. Do not miss one. That is so. That was nothing but cons for Dark Knight up until this point. I said nothing but cons. What's a pro? It looks cool. That's really well. To be fair, it at least allows you to, because its OGCDs are all the same cooldown. These 3 abilities are the same cooldown, and even your plunge. That you could fit them and you could throw them in any little order you want. So it's a bit more freeing in its opener than the other tanks. So your rotation, your GCDs are going to be used the same way, but Your OGCDs, you have a little more flexibility in when you want to toss them in. It doesn't really matter in which order you want to toss them in. So that's a pro. I find it fun to play, despite all of my criticisms of the class. I do find it fun to play. I just wish it didn't have the problems that it currently does that the other tanks don't have. That's why I currently feel it's a B plus tank. Now, functionally, it's as viable as any other tank, but it's just worse than any other tank. There's no reason to bring Dark Knight over any other tank, for no matter the content. There's no reason to use it. It's just cool to use, so I do use it, but you might as well use it. If you want to be, as efficient as possible, you're going to use any other tank over it. There's no reason to use it over any other tank. And that kind of sucks. It sucks. It really doesn't have anything about it that... It just has the Blackest Night. And this move isn't that great. It really isn't. It only lasts 7 seconds. Yeah, I'm going to take no damage from this guy, but it's not gonna break the shield, and that's it. My potency is gone. My mana's gone. There it goes. Big fucking deal, dude. Big fucking deal. Now, this is a low sending ability, so don't take what I just said as like that means anything. It doesn't. You want to use Blackest Night in like raid scenarios and in dungeons for big pools and your tank busters. Yeah, it's gonna block a high amount of damage. It's going to do what you want it to do. But until they remove the freaking mana cost on it, or they just remove just remove the mana cost on it, and just make it, nerf it to 20%, remove the mana cost. Much better ability. Or shit, you can even increase the duration from 7 seconds to like 10 seconds. So it has an opportunity to be broken. I mean, that would even help. But yeah, for those reasons, that's why I feel Dark Knight is a B plus tank. Now, that doesn't mean it's not viable. You can use it in all content and still get the job done. It just has more issues than the other tanks just don't deal with. And that sucks. This is coming from a guy who likes playing this tank more than any other tank. But if I'm going to go into Savage raiding, or if I ever get to play an Ultimate, I'm not bringing a fucking Dark Knight, dude. I'm bringing Warrior or Paladin. I'm not bringing Dark Knight. Hopefully it gets the changes it deserves in Endwalker. Because this tank right here, if it just got some quality of life buffs, God, it would be such a dope tank. It'd be so fucking fun to play, dude. It's already fun to play, but you wouldn't feel guilty for playing it. Shit. But alright, that's all I have for today. If you actually listen to me just ramble about the tanks, thank you. I appreciate your time and your ear. If this helps you out in any way, hey, that's cool, because I did this just for fun. I'm not going to continue rambling. That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and have a good day. Take it easy.